is also going to be right behind you on that. Well, I'm glad everybody's here. Oh, look at that. It's time to go. Okay. So we're going to start with a blessing. And feel free to silence phones if that helps. I have my phone in my pocket because we're having a little hard time letting people in the front door. So it's possible I may pause to do that. You'll have to forgive me for that. The blessing I meant to have on the screen, I will next session. The blessing says, just like other ones, Asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu, and then la'asok b'divrei Torah. And we're doing it for several reasons that I'll explain later. So if you know the blessing, join me. If you don't know the blessing, amen always works. And so it goes. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Excellent. And that is why there was very little singing happening live during the pandemic, because that delay with Zoom makes it very difficult. Okay, so people at home, Judy, Joel, and Scott, I have you over my shoulder on the screen. But I want to use the big screen tonight for other purposes. And so if you have anything you want to ask or say or contribute, just unmute yourself and jump in. And we hear you loud and clear in the room.
Thank you.
And Ellen, did you hear that too? Great. Okay, everybody. We are going to be tackling the topic of DIY Judaism. And you've heard me mention it now a lot, and it's just the beginning. You'll hear about it a fair bit this year because it is, in my mind, one of the most valuable and impactful ways that we can ensure that Judaism carries on. I'm not going to go into great depth about that aspect of it, but if anyone wants to talk further about that, happy to meet you for my first available appointment, which is in 4 weeks or something. So what I did was I stopped to think about what is it that when I say DIY Judaism, do it yourself Judaism, what is it I'm hoping for? What am I shooting for? And then I realized I'm asking the wrong question. The question is, what are you hoping for and what are you shooting for? So before we get into tonight's material, and I'll explain how I divided the 3 sessions in a few minutes, but we're going to consider this series to be a practicum. There's going to be a lot of consideration of ideas, and then idea sharing, brainstorming, and some practice. So when we get started on our Judaism, the question I want to start with is, let me say it differently. The question one should start with is, what do I want to get out of my Judaism? And it might be a question that's hard for you all to answer because I'm looking at the group who's with us, and every one of you is a deeply embedded member of Jewish tradition and peoplehood, and you have been for a long time. And so it might be actually difficult for you to answer that question. But I'm going to ask you to try anyway. Can we just throw out a couple of responses to the question, what is it that you hope comes out of your Judaism? No right answers or wrong answers. I guess they're all right answers. A deeper connection to spirituality.
A deeper connection to my extended family.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
A deeper connection to the state of Israel and what it has accomplished.
Did you hear that, Art? Okay, the first one was a deeper connection to my extended family. Improving myself.
Great. I had said a deeper connection to the state of Israel and everything it has meant to the Jewish people.
Excellent. Thank you, Joel. We did hear that one. That was nice and clear. Thank you. I didn't repeat it because everyone here was able to hear you. Oh yeah, Peter, go ahead. Okay. Peter says he's looking for a more effective way to communicate internally for himself and externally about what this means to him. Good answer. Great. Okay. Evgen said she's looking to Judaism to help hone her internal spiritual self and find that connection to something beyond herself. Barbara? Right. Barbara says she's looking for a deeper connection to things outside of our tribe, outside of our community. Good. Carol? That's the question I asked. So Carol says she wants to understand better about what Judaism means to her. So a question like this is perfect.
Ensuring that I'm dealing with people.
Okay. So Art says he wants Judaism to help him ensure that he's dealing with people the way he wants to. And so I'm going to just push that statement and suggest that Judaism might be a mechanism for you to express the best of yourself, both when you're dealing with other people and in every other moment. You're looking for Judaism as a curriculum, perhaps, or a pathway to get there. It's great. Judy? Uh-huh. Great. Great. Okay, good. Judy Kellen is saying that this is that Judaism can be a cultural element of expression that can also become a bridge to connect with others through culture to understand each other, theirs and ours. Great. Moira? Mm. Terrific. So Moira says that Judaism can become something that creates a safe space or a constructed, explicit space for exploration of spirituality, God, other items that don't as easily pop up and allow for conversation out there in the rest of the world, the rest of life. These are perfect answers. Before I move on, anyone want to offer any more before we go? I'm looking at folks at home. Judy, it looks like you're trying to unmute, but you're still muted.
Here, there. Okay, so this might sound a little weird, but my reaction was more. I would like Judaism to be a greater part of my life than it is now. Somehow, so it's always there. It's in the background, but I'm hoping to find a way to, have it be more prominent.
Okay. Okay. So Judy says that Judaism is a part of her life, but she wants it to be a bigger part of her life. It's always there, but she wants more, which is kind of like Carol, kind of dodging the question. Why do you want more? What do you suspect is there? What do you think you haven't yet discovered or haven't accessed enough? And so the kinds of answers that we've provided are fabulous, all of you, except for Carol. Everybody knows, I think, that I tease people that I really like. So, okay. So when we are thinking in terms of do it yourself, and you know what you want to get out of it, That's going to be an essential understanding to figure out how to do that. So what we're going to do over the next couple sessions is break Judaism into 3 realms. And we're going to go through them. The 3 realms, by the way, are time, space, and meaning. That's how I decided to break it up. Could have been any number of other ways. Tonight is about the topic of space. And so those of you who are note takers, if you prefer, I can give you the resource page, or I can hand it to you at the end of the night, whichever you prefer in your style. So folks at home, as soon as we're done here, I'm going to email you the pages that I have here, but I'll show them to you so that we can work on them together. And we're going to meander through various elements of Judaism. And here's my assumption. That is that the strictest, most traditional expression of Jewish traditions hasn't hooked you. If it had, you probably wouldn't feel like you want more. And you probably wouldn't be finding your community in Temple Sinai. You'd probably be more comfortable in a community that emphasizes tradition. So my approach is going to be this. As we go through each topic, I'm going to talk with you about what the traditions look like, but then we're going to use our God-given creativity to think outside the box. And I've got lots of ideas, and I know you do as well. You just haven't realized it yet. And so together, what we're going to do is take a look at what is available to us. Any questions or clarifications, Barbara? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's such a lovely articulation. So Barbara says she was taking another stab at what she's looking for. And she said, helping transform her relationship to Judaism and tradition from being an intellectual understanding into, she said, instinctual. I might offer the word embodied, but a more of a visceral participation, immersion, connection in a physical, corporeal way. And yeah, yeah. Okay, great. That's a great example. So I'm tempted not to give this to you because I don't want you to jump ahead and get distracted while we're talking through things. But if you'd like it now, happy to hand it to you. Anyone want it now? Okay, good. It's a resource sheet, so you can remember what it was we talked about here tonight. The next 2 resource sheets have a lot of actual links and suggestions on them. This one, a little bit less so, not for any good reason. So I'll be sending them out digitally as well, so you can just click on the links. It'll make it a lot easier for you. Okay. So I have found that to achieve what Barbara just articulated as a goal, that is to really connect with something, there is a great power in what scholars call performative ritual. The idea that we do something so that we get a desired outcome. And we're going to give a couple of examples just so we can all be on the same page. But when we light Shabbos candles, that's a performative ritual. What are we hoping to get out of that? Throw out a couple of answers. Okay. Somehow lighting a candle makes the beginning of Shabbat. Good. Okay, good. It pulls us in and focuses us. Great. Ah, it's tradition. It connects us to the nostalgia, to our grandparents. Perfect. Good. Good. Okay. 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 It's so Jewish that Barbara kind of associates it just with all the Jewish traditions and laws and practices, that it's just a symbol. That's great. So we light the candles hoping something happens. How about when we bake our son or daughter a cake, or we go to Stop and Shop and get one for their first birthday? If you hold by the tradition of a kid, kind of playfully touching the cake, and then, as they always do, touching their mouth and then realizing, oh my God, this tastes good. And then slowly looking at you to realize, I'm not going to get in trouble, as they reach back out and get another fistful of cake and begin to shove it up their nose and in their hair and in their ear canal. When you bring that cake for your child's first birthday party, a performative ritual, what are you hoping happens? Correct. You're trying to create a special day. You like creating joy in this little one. And you know that frosting is something that they have never had before. And the nostalgia. You've got all these people around, everyone taking pictures and hoping something beautiful goes viral on YouTube, but you're connecting to all the first birthdays you've seen. How about do you know the tradition called upshurn in some communities, in Hasidic communities, on a boy's third birthday, or on Lag BaOmer in his third year? One of those two is the tradition of giving him his first haircut. For 3 years, he's run around with beautiful long locks. Performative ritual. I could give you better answers, but any idea why? Why wait till his third birthday and then make a big deal about having a big public haircutting party? Great. Marking time. Our little boy made it 3 years without succumbing to child mortality. Fabulous. Good. Again, great. It places you in the bigger landscape of Jewish tradition. You're now one of those people who has done that. Perfect. Couple other answers. 2 quick answers. I didn't intend to mention this, but the first is that it is designed to model or reflect planting a new fruit tree. When you plant a fruit tree, for 3 years, you don't harvest the fruit. You leave it on the tree, because if you pull off the apple, the tree has to put more energy back into creating more apples. If you leave the apple there, it can put more energy into sinking deep roots. And so farmers won't harvest for 3 years, according to the Torah. And similarly, we want our only sons, who cares about the daughters? We want them to sink good, strong roots. The other thing too, which symbolically I always like, is the idea that you ever see little kids running around the mall and they've got these big ridiculous mohawks, pink hair and who knows what. I mean, that's parental vanity. No 2-year-old says, I want a mohawk. And so in some ways, it's a communication to a parent saying, yes, this is your child, but it's not your child. You don't get to do anything you want to this kid. Hands off for 3 years. So it's a little self-control. So yeah, go ahead, Moira. Yeah. Moira's remembering when they were in Israel on Lag BaOmer, and the tour guide was trying to convince them to do the haircut that day. That's great. I wanted to do it too, and Julie said no. So when we get a ritual right, how do we know? How do we know we've gotten it right? We repeat it. Excellent answer. Anyone at home want to take a?
There's a glow of connection in your heart.
Oh, poetic. So Scott says a glow of connection in your heart. Evgen just added, it brings happiness. Mhm. So we'll come back to that as we go. Peter asks, how do you know it's time for a ritual? That's a great question. I'm going to expand it too, just to push Evgen's answer off the center of the table, and that is, it's not just happiness. When you're standing at a graveside and you put that shovel full of dirt in, and the performance of that ritual, the sound of the soil hitting the top of the casket of your loved one, that's not happiness, but it's something authentic. It's deep and it's emotional. Right. Lovely. Carol just added, if you're satisfied, doesn't matter if anyone else thinks it's right or not. Good answer. Yeah. So now I'm just going to take a quick moment and ask you for examples of rituals that you know of, Jewish rituals, I guess it could be other ones, that you're aware of that you haven't done. Yeah, that's what I want. Just a couple of examples. What are you aware of out there and have never participated in? Okay, swirling the chicken. It's called a kaparot. After or kaparis, right? Just before Yom Kippur. There's a very small sector of the ultra Orthodox world that somehow believes in transferring sin to this poor chicken over your head and then slaughtering it. Okay. Mikvah has only been part of Moira's experience once when she became Jewish and not since. Good. Okay. Not mikvah. Okay, good. Barbara added saying Shema in the morning and evening. Good. Touching mezuzot, going in and out of the house. Yeah. Great. Great examples. Right. So Art just added on saying a bracha when drinking wine. Borei priagafen. Good. Good. Okay. Great. Okay, good. We're coming back to that, I promise. Grant says a traditional observance of Shabbat, shutting everything down.
Laying tefillin.
Okay, so Joel says laying tefillin. Peter, you were saying communicating with friends on Shabbat. Okay. So these are traditions that we're aware of that we haven't been doing. I assume those two were traditions you do use. Great. And reaching out before Shabbat was Peter's example to wish a Shabbat Shalom ahead of time, not something you usually do. Is that correct? Now, okay, good. So these are great examples. I'm not going to go through and take answers, but I want you to ask yourself, on some level, why not? What has prevented you from doing it? And I'm going to offer a couple of possibilities. One might be that you don't know how to do it right. Another is you don't have real access to doing it. A third is you might be afraid that you'd look a little silly. And a fourth is that when you intellectually think about it, it doesn't sound like it would work. And I'll use work in air quotes for the sense that something should happen, and you don't know that laying tefillin, for example, is going to achieve that outcome for you. You might have other answers, but I want to keep moving because I know I do this. I get excited about something and get stuck. So here's what we have so far. We have a notion of performative ritual, that it affects some change in us, that we want that change, that if we have the right rituals in front of us and the right mindset, the outcomes can be really quite valuable because it can add to our lives in ways that thus far maybe we've sought and didn't know how to achieve. So that's where we're starting tonight. That's the even playing field. We're going to be practicing, as I said, and early on, it may seem a little bit forced, but you will get the hang of it, I promise. By the third session, you're going to be rattling off my requests like it's effortless. So let's go ahead and get started right away with space, shall we? When the temple was destroyed for the second time in Jerusalem, in what year? 70 AD. Very good. Or CE. The rabbis, who were already beginning to take over leadership of the community, they transitioned our focus from the Mikdash, the holy spot, to the Mikdash Me'at, the little holy space. And that was? Oh, no. I thought you were heading in the right place, but no, you didn't. What did I get excited about as she started to answer? The house. Exactly right. So what they said was the kitchen table stands in now as the altar. The sanctity that we were seeking in that central location is now decentralized and available to everyone. The Beit Knesset comes along over the next couple hundred years. That's what Moira was suggesting. And you've heard me teach this before. What we call a synagogue has three other names in Hebrew: a Beit Knesset, a Beit Midrash, and a Beit Knesset, Midrash, and Beit Tefillah. So Beit Knesset is where you gather. A Beit Midrash is where you learn. And a Beit Tefillah is where you pray. So that comes along, but I want to stay focused on the house. So we're going to take a look at the Jewish house. And you're going to be thinking in terms of your house. Some of the things I'm going to mention are right there. Other things are not. And I don't care if they're there or not. You might hear me mention something and think, ooh, that sounds cool. I want to explore that, maybe add it to my house. And you'll hear other things and think to yourself, no, that doesn't speak to me. That's the goal. Okay. So what makes up a Jewish house? Give me some of the descriptors of a Jewish house. Mezuzah on the doors. Good. Shabbat candlesticks, right?
Keeping kosher.
Okay, a kosher home. We're going to come back to that as well, Joel. Thank you. A Chanukiah, good. A Havdalah set. A Kiddush cup. Very often, these ritual items have stories that go along with them. We bought it in Israel, or it was my grandmother. She brought it. It's the only thing she carried from the old country, or I got it at my bar mitzvah. Did I say that already? No. So a lot of times these objects are more than just functional. They come with narrative. Good. What else? Great. Shabbat candlesticks. Yes. A Seder plate. Was that what you just said too? That was like stereo. Good. A Siddur. Good. Jewish books. Yep. Jewish artwork. Yes. Say that again. Sorry.
A ketubah.
Good. I wasn't sure if anyone would mention that. A ketubah. Yeah. Very good. Here, I even have a. I'm going to advance without. Hold on. I got to switch over. There we go. Yeah, so there's the ketubah. I don't know if you can see that. You probably can't see that at home, folks. I'm sorry. It's just grabbed any old ketubah off the internet. It's nothing special. And yes, you saw me flash past the chamsa. It's actually not. I mean, it kind of is a chamsa, but it's not what it's called. Do you know, Carol? Do you know what this is? This is called a mizrach. The word mizrach means east. And so in some homes, they have these beautifully illuminated words of Mizrach that they put on their eastern wall to orient themselves in the home towards Jerusalem. No. Because if they're Mizrahi, then they're actually already to the east. They probably want a Maravi, a western wall facing thing. But this is an example of something that would go up on your wall and would do what possibly? If you chose to put this up on your wall, what might be the outcome? Are you likely to use it that way, Carol? She said it identifies which direction you are to pray. Correct. Yeah, that wouldn't probably speak to you because it's not your tradition yet. I don't know, maybe it will be, to pray in your home. there are a few prayers that we know in the sanctuary that we either face the Torah or Jerusalem. Not all of them. Women especially aren't really obligated by that in tradition. So, but that's what it would do for someone else. What else would this do if it were up on your wall? This is a mizrach, and this is a tradition of somebody whose observance has them praying, and they use this to say, mizrach is over there. That must be Jerusalem's direction. So now when it's time for Baruch Hu, they face the mizrach. Well, yeah, sure, they do. In more traditional homes, Ashkenazim, Sephardim, Mizrahim, Yemenite. It's a widely practiced tradition in other communities. What else? Orthodox. Yeah. But here's something I want to make sure. Thank you for getting me to say that. I want to make sure that we do not surrender our traditions to those who do them differently. They do not get to claim this stuff. This is your stuff. A mizrach, even if you've never heard of it, is yours. And if you like the idea, you don't have to defend the fact that I'm not Orthodox, but I like it. That is not the kind of sentence we should be stating. I just had a conversation today with someone about my sermon from Rosh Hashanah about the word woke. And she had a strong response. And she said, I'm awake, but I'm not woke, because that's their word. I said, the hell it is. Why should we give them that word? Anyway, point being, we don't need to ask permission to use something which you would more traditionally find in an observant home. Thank you for getting me to say that. Yeah, Moira. Yeah. So Moira's remembering. Great. Moira's remembering a mizrach in her grandparents. Your in-laws' home. It wasn't used as a mizrach functionally, but what it did was it identified the dining room as a Jewish dining room. Perfect example. Also, I would think that knowing that this is meant to connect the individual to Jerusalem, then when you see it up there, kind of like you were saying, Moira, it connects you to peoplehood. Any Judaica shop. Yep. Do a quick Google search, Mizrach, and you'll get plenty. Yeah, Barbara. And Yeah. So if you're a traditional Jew, you know how Muslims, when it's time for them to pray, they orient themselves towards the Kaaba. And on their phone, they have a little GPS thing. It locates them on the globe and then says, if you're standing right here in Stamford, Connecticut, the Kaaba is going to be that way. And now they know that they are going to kneel down and pray that way towards the Kaaba. It's the same way for Jews. They got that from us. So our Kaaba is Jerusalem. So this goes on the wall of someone's home and identifies the direction to pray. So I'm going to keep going. Go ahead, Barbara. Yeah. Right. Good example. Other kinds of Jewish art. Perfect example. Let's think for just a moment about the mezuzah. First of all, what goes in the mezuzah? Kind of, not really, actually. Now that I think about it. Oh, so Evgen said first prayer, and I shot that answer down. And then she said protection. And I'm going to say a big fat no. Yeah, what's in the mezuzah? Yep. It's a piece of the Torah. It's an excerpt from the Torah. It's got the Shema and a portion of the Ve'ahavta, which is not prayer, It is instruction. It is statement. But the Shema isn't a prayer. Shema Yisrael. Listen, everyone. God is our God. God is one. That's not a prayer. That's a proclamation. In the mezuzah, we've got a little kosher scroll. And again, I'm coming back to the word kosher. Joel, I haven't forgotten you. We've got a kosher scroll written by someone who's well-trained in perfection without any errors. And when we have it up there, a number of things happen. I could ask you for your inputs, but I don't want to wait that long. So I'm just going to give you a couple examples. Number one, it clearly identifies a Jewish home. You walk up to someone's house that a new neighbor, and you see they've got a mezuzah. These are my people. You walk down the hallway in an apartment building, and you see mezuzah, no mezuzah, right? Oh my God, it's the Waterstone. God, what do they pass those things out like candy? They're all over the place. So mezuzot identify. They're like saying, here I am, Jew here, right? Then there's the tradition of reaching up and touching it, and often then kissing as you walk past. Where'd that come from? No idea. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter where it came from. Doesn't say to do that in the Torah. We put it up there because it says, you shall write these words on your doorposts and teach them diligently to your children. Where'd that come from? Right. Oh, Carol suggested maybe the kissing of the mezuzah was like when we kiss the Torah before and after an aliyah. We can definitely create reasons. But what I want to make sure you know is that somebody created this tradition. This is not deoraita. This is not out of the Torah. Somebody said just what Evgen did. They created the idea to show respect, maybe, or awareness. It's about heightening your participation. It's from turning it from what Barbara was saying before, an intellectual idea to a visceral idea. And we get to make up our answers as well. That scroll inside is...
Rabbi?
Yeah, go ahead, Joel.
Would you clarify that the mezuzah is not in the Torah? It's a gesture that was created by the rabbis after the Torah?
No.
So when they... Yeah.
No, what you mix two things together. The idea of putting these words on our doorposts, that's on the text that we put on our doorposts. We're following that instruction. There's nowhere in the Torah that says you should reach up and touch the thing and then kiss your hand.
Sorry.
No, thank you for asking. So somebody said, all right, we've got this mezuzah up on the wall, but we can get more out of it. And they wrote up a new idea. They started doing it, and someone saw it and said, oh, I love that. That's great. Let's do that. We open up our Ark doors on Yom Kippur afternoon, and people have a chance to go up there and stand with the Torah. You think we came up with that? No. Rabbi Disick probably saw it someplace and said, oh, that's a great idea, and brought it back to Temple Sinai. None of the things you give me credit for are my ideas. I steal everything. Evgen? Yeah. I think that's exactly right. Evgen says that if you just leave it up there and then forget about it, it is not doing the job of keeping you focused on something you want to stay focused on. I personally don't touch the mezuzah. Maybe if I did, I would get something out of it. It's not my practice. Yeah, yeah, for sure. Of course. Of course. Barbara is pointing out that just because you take care of the keva of reaching up and touching it doesn't mean you get the benefit of the kavanah of staying focused on it. Well, yeah. Okay. Peter says it gives him peace. Why does it give him peace? Who cares? Right. It doesn't matter. And it might not do that for anybody else. And that doesn't matter. That's Peter taking control of his own Judaism and putting up a mezuzah because he knows it gives him peace. Yeah, Carol's aware that it goes on most other doorposts, not the bathroom. Usually the kitchen, yes, but not the bathroom. Yeah. So what I want to do now is I want to jump to another, there's a ketubah again. I want to start thinking about the idea of blessing, because there is a lot of power in words. And when we say Baruch Atah Adonai, something very interesting is happening. First of all, for those who are on this non-dual journey with me, as soon as you say Atah, meaning you, that is a distinction between me and you. That is me pointing over there. Here's me, there's you. Blessed are you. So there's already an address between you and an external presence. Baruch, blessed are you, God. That is an interesting formula for a blessing. And it begs the question, what is a blessing? What is it supposed to do? What are we hoping to get out of it? One of my teachers in Jerusalem, I think he coined the term, so I'm stealing it. His name is Moshe Zilberberg. So there, he has got credit. He called it audacious covenant theology. Audacious because who are we to say, blessed are you? We're the ones sitting here blessing God. Blessed are you, God. That's audacious. Covenant is this notion that we're upholding our side of the interaction. And as a part of that, we hope for something in return. We're going to move into a space in which we talk about blessings. But tell me, in your words, it could be specifics, but I mean generally, when might you say a blessing? Okay, so when you're about to do something ritual, like lighting candles, good. Okay, yep. So Evgen uses blessing first thing in the morning upon waking. Does that come from a place of gratitude? Okay, great. Okay, good. Okay, before bed as well, at the end of the night, thanks for the day that's just happened. Good. Before eating, great. Not a ritual practice. That's a great example. Good. Before eating. Oh, we haven't gotten why yet. I'll let you answer it though. So Moira's remembering that before a session, they do a blessing. Is it always la'asok? Okay, good. So the blessing over learning Torah. And she'll tell us why in a moment. I want a few more examples. When else, what kinds of situations might we choose to use a blessing?
When something truly wonderful happens to you.
Thank you, Joel. That's perfect. Maybe a shehecheanu. There are lots of others that we'll get to next session. Sorry, Barbara, go ahead. You were going to say the same thing. Okay, good. Joel, I want you to know that your answer was great. And Barbara saw how excited I got about it. And then she jumped in and said, I was going to say the same thing. Art? Yep. Right. Before eating, Peter mentioned that as well. Good. Exactly. Any other examples? Washing hands? Yeah. Good. Okay. So now I'm going to let Moira tell us and see if you can tie together all of them. Waking and going to bed, eating, lighting candles. What else did we have? Seeing or experiencing something momentous. What is a blessing then? Got common to it?
It's a thank you.
It could be a thank you, but not always.
So the reason why I use it when we start study sessions is to create a space in time. We're entering a different space now, and it focuses us. And then it also says that we're here, we're doing something Jewish here.
That's beautiful. So what Moira is saying, and I think it holds true for all of them, although like the mezuzah, if we stop and say a motzi, it doesn't work like this a lot of the time, sometimes. But if a blessing is working right, what it has done is it has dragged us from one space or one time or one mindset into a place we want to be. We're ready to study. I need to turn off everything else from before. We're ready to eat. I want to be focused on gratitude for this food. I have high hopes for the day. So waking up and expressing something as a ritual is really effective. Those who meditate know the same idea. It is about sitting still, closing your eyes, taking breaths, slowing your attention down to one thing or nothing. Those who exercise know the same thing. You know, the warm up is about getting yourself into a space. So blessings, if they're working well, do just that. And they're powerful. We're going to come back, as I said, to blessing next session. And we're going to get much more deeply into it. What time is that? 7:45. Yeah, I think I'm going to keep moving here and then we'll focus in on blessing more next time. What I want to move on now to is eating. And Joel, I'm going to come back to your comment about a Jewish home being kosher because I want to explore that word. It's an important word. And I want to make sure that we share a definition of the word kosher. It means acceptable. That's what the word means. Something that's kosher is acceptable. So what are the examples of a kosher? Yeah, give me kosher examples. I'll make it even more specific. Outside of food. Okay. We're going to get into the food thing more in depth in just a moment. Outside of food. Tell me what Evgen used it today.
And I said, that's not kosher.
And
It was that was not acceptable.
Beautiful. I mean, it kind of slips into the vernacular. That's a great example. And Ellen just walked in the room. She was online just not long ago. And here she is in this flesh now. When have you heard, Grant remembers me referring to Torah as kosher. And when have you heard me do that? In what context? Good. Good. So the condition of the Torah. Yeah, right. A Torah that was largely destroyed by the Nazis is not kosher. The one we have in the hallway, it's not kosher, meaning it's not acceptable for ritual use. And in fact, if I find a little typo, actually, it's not a typo, that's typed, a little hando. If I find one hando in the whole scroll, the whole thing is not kosher. When else might you come across the word kosher?
Types of behavior which are contrary to what we understand as being the right way to do it.
Good. Okay. Okay. So I don't think you were able to hear at home that Barbara was asking for clarification on how Evgen used it. And Joel, you answered the question exactly the way Evgen was going to respond to Barbara. So that was weird. But I don't think it's exactly what you meant, Joel. Can you give me an example when you say a proper behavior or an action? What's a kosher action? It could, but that's not what I think.
A kosher action, in my understanding, is ethical behavior towards your fellow man.
Okay. So then I'm going to push it back towards tradition for a moment. It could be something like you all just focused in on, but when someone goes to the mikvah for an immersion, in tradition, you have a mikvah person, an observer, a witness who stands there and watches you do the immersion. And if you do it just right, and there's a very specific way to do it, when you rise, they look at you and say, kosher. It was an acceptable immersion. Or if you fail to wrap your tefillin properly, it's not a kosher action. So we've got kosher thoughts or behaviors. We've got kosher rituals. We've got kosher food. We've got kosher objects. Kosher means acceptable. So hang on to your seats, folks. We know the traditional rules around what kosher food looks like. Yes, we know that in the Torah, it says a couple things. It says you shouldn't boil a baby goat in its own mother's milk. That's what it says. It says that you can eat animals that have split hooves and chew their cud. It says that you can eat things from the sea if they have scales and fins. And it has a list of birds that are okay and not okay. That's what it says about kashrut. That's it. Quick joke. Some of you have heard me tell this before, but Moses is sitting up on Mount Sinai with God, and God's delivering the whole Torah. And Moses is furiously taking notes. And every time God says something, Moses gets it down. Thou shalt not kill. Got it. Honor your mother and father. Got it. Observe the Sabbath day and keep it holy. Got it. And then God says, don't boil a kid in its mother's milk. And there's a pause. And God hears the pause, so waits. And Moses says, sorry, God, I just want to make sure I get you clear on that one. You said, don't boil a kid in its, do you mean like don't boil any goat in any goat's milk? And God says, no, don't boil a kid in its mother's milk. It says it in the Torah 3 times. And Moses waits. Okay, I just want to make sure. Are you saying that we should not mix any dairy with any meat? And God said, no, don't boil a kid in its mother's milk. And Moses just really wants to get this right. Says, okay, so should we then have 2 separate kitchens, one for dairy and one for milk, and that on Passover we have 2 separate kitchens, and nothing should ever combine between the two. And a restaurant, and God's, oh my God, Moses, do whatever the hell you want. Everything, almost everything in the kosher tradition was made up. That doesn't make it less powerful, but what it means is you get to make it up too. How many of you have something you can name right off the top of your head that you do not eat for ethical or environmental or health reasons? I know you must. You're like the health central over here. She's a sociopath. Naturopath. We'll talk about the other one later. Sorry, Ellen. So what, my daughter is so proud that she has never had fast food. Doesn't know what it tastes like. Doesn't want to because she likes being able to say, I've never had fast food. She could say it about soda too until recently, and now she likes soda. For my daughter, fast food is not kosher. For a person who ethically chooses veganism, animal products are not kosher. For a person who is who's on a paleo diet, maybe that's the wrong example, carbs are treif, not kosher. So when you intentionally make a decision about what is kosher, what is acceptable for you, and then you ritualize it with stopping and saying a blessing to lift up intention in you, what that does is it turns potentially every eating moment into a Jewish moment, a present moment, an ethical moment, and a moment in which you connect with Torah, because Torah teaches us what kosher means. Different definitions, but the same emphasis on thinking about and taking seriously what enters our body as our own little temple. So, so if you, when I'm working with someone who wants to become Jewish, I've got lots of little exercises we do over the course of the year. One of the things I ask them to do is to pick something which is traditionally excluded from Jewish eating. I say to them, not something you love. I had a Mexican candidate once, and she and I were talking about chorizo. Like, that's the essence of her. So I said, okay, not chorizo. If you like sushi and you die for eel, you love eel, Don't pick eel, but pick something you like. You know, you like shrimp. And for the course of our time together, I want you to exclude shrimp from your diet. And then every time you go to sit down at a sushi restaurant and you're looking down the menu and you see the California roll and you think, oh, does that have shrimp? No, that doesn't have shrimp. Fake, well, it's supposed to be real crab. It's usually fake crab, right? Yeah, which often is flavored with real crab essence. Yeah. I don't know how hard you have to squeeze a crab to get essence out, but all right, something with shrimp. I don't know. You see that roll and you think, oh, yeah, I'm not ordering shrimp this year. And right there, you just had a Jewish moment. And so, you know, I was a vegetarian for a couple of years. Julie has been a vegetarian for decades and decades. And when I was a veggie, I hated going to vegetarian restaurants. There were way too many choices. I preferred to go to a restaurant that was normal menu and there were 3 options on the menu that I could pick from. That was comfortable for me because then I knew, okay, I don't eat all this stuff. I was a vegetarian when I worked at Philmont Scout Ranch out in New Mexico. And there's a staff at this camp, summer camp, a staff of 1,000 people. I was one of 7 chaplains, and these people eat pork, a lot of pork. And I just was so aware of my identity as someone who doesn't eat pork. It was powerful to say, what's going on around me is not something I'm going to participate in. Do-it-yourself Judaism could include not changing your choices. I'm not suggesting you eat differently. I'm suggesting you look at what you put in your body and sanctify it and say, oh my God, you know what? The fact that I always choose fair trade coffee, that's a big deal. That's a Jewish choice. So before I have my coffee, I'm going to just pause and I'm going to speak a blessing. And like I said, I have a worksheet here on blessings. We'll do that next time. But it doesn't have to be a Baruch Atah Adonai. That's pretty audacious. I want you to say something that's going to achieve the outcome that you want, which is turning it from an intellectual idea to an embodied idea, to connect yourself to tradition and to be present in whatever you're already doing. This is not necessarily about taking on more traditions. Thoughts, questions, clarifications, Moira?
Thank you for this gift. It actually made me think about something from my childhood that I never quite processed. And in my family growing up, my parents and my grandmother lived with us. We all said as a family, and there were 10 of us every night for dinner. We all said the blessing before meals and the blessing after meals. And now I'm thinking, getting dinner on the table for 10 and cleaning it up and no dishwasher. And I realized that you didn't, once you sat down and said the grace before meals, you didn't go into the kitchen. You didn't clear a plate. You didn't start washing half the pots. And it really created a space for my parents every night. It was wonderful.
The other thing which it does is it is related to the higher level experience of being human. Sometimes I'll use my example of Dave. When I put, actually, I got this idea from Mandy Patinkin, who is online doing this. But when he pours his dog food into the bowl, he's singing Shema, and then he does motzi, and when he's done, he says kosher, and the dog dives in. And Dave would not have the restraint to have this nice, beautiful, tasty, hot food on the table and to say, whoa, wait. Baruch Atah, or whatever version the family's using. So in addition to all the things you said, Moira, it also reminds us that we have control. We can control ourselves, our urges. Taking a beautiful loaf of fresh bread. I think I have a picture of fresh bread. There it is. Oh, and that's my grandmother's, rice kugel. This comes out to the table. It's Shabbos, and it's warm, and you can smell it. And before you can dive in, you slow down. You say, wait a minute, I'm not an animal. I mean, I am an animal, but I'm going to elevate that a little bit. Any other thoughts or questions or? Okay. Yeah, so Joel, sorry, not Joel, Peter was just saying that it all seems quite personal, and he's enjoying listening to the conversation. And maybe I'll turn your attention to a key word in do it yourself, which is yourself. Yeah. Huh. So Carol's asking a great question. Can you say a prayer over a shrimp? Does that make it kosher? Does that make it kosher? So Evgen is using Torah to definitively say, no, you cannot make shrimp kosher. But I'm just going to counter with the fact that the Torah says a lot of things that we choose not to uphold. If I followed every word of Torah, and I'm not kidding, I would literally have stoned my son to death years ago. It's very clear. The insolent son should be taken to the center of town and stood up before the elders and said, this is what happens to the Ben Sorer Umoreh, the wayward and insolent son. And then they take him out of the town and they stone the child to death. Yeah, we don't do that one. So I guess what I'm getting at is we all pick and choose. The most observant person out there picks and chooses. In fact, there was a study a long time ago, and someone came up with the number that if you really, really wanted to, you can probably only do fewer than 200 of the 613 commandments in the Torah to begin with. So I just want to, the reason I'm responding to Evgen this way is because it could be tempting to say, Torah says it's not. So it's not. But that's not the way I live my life. I don't think it's the way most of you live yours either. Torah is not a veto for me. So I'm going to have to be consistent. I'm going to have to say if there's a good reason that a person wants to make shrimp kosher for themselves, why not? Yeah.
I was raised kosher, so I know the experience of looking at the ingredients and saying, I can't have that. And it never felt negative. It felt a reaffirmation of who I am and everything sort of philosophy of life. Today, we follow a diet that minimizes saturated fat for a medical reason. And I have a feeling, we look at the ingredients and the nutrition, and I have a certain feeling of putting a dinner together that is minimal saturated fat, that's delicious, and having found those products, and it could include shrimp. And I have that same feeling as I used to have.
Oh, that's such a
In
beautiful.
terms of an identity of taking care of our body and doing something, and and it's a very similar feeling.
Oh, that's so great. Just want to make sure, could folks at home hear Barbara okay? Okay, good.
Yes.
What that made me think of too was my daughter, who had lots of allergies. The only one that she seems to still have is peanuts. And so she does the same thing. She has to look at every label, and that's part of her identity. What's interesting is we think she's outgrowing the peanut allergy, but I think she's going to struggle to ever get to a point where she eats things with peanuts, because it's so deeply embedded in her that I am someone who doesn't eat peanuts. It's no longer connected to a health risk or whatever. The challenge or the opportunity for you in art might be to take that type of eating and sanctify it by saying, how marvelous that we have the knowledge, the technology, and the availability to create a menu that keeps us not just alive, but enjoying the pleasure of it. That's do-it-yourself Judaism. Good. All right, let's talk about challah for just a minute. Doing on time. Yeah, okay, good. My intent, by the way, was to go to about 8:30. Do I have your energy for that? Okay, good. If anyone needs to excuse themselves, no I can't say no judgment. Of course there's judgment. So challah. How many of you have made challah? How many have made challah? Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. Any of you make challah regularly? Ellen? Yeah, great. So challah is this marvelous pedagogic tool that our tradition came up with who knows when. Some ethnographer can give you an answer on where we came up with challah. But the provision of challah to our families is such a visceral practice. And if you care to speak to it, emphasizing exactly what I say, I'd love to hear you say so. If you're going to speak against what I say, keep it to yourself. But the physicality of it is really performative. The patience of it is very effective. The delivery of it, both in beauty and in impact. I mean, what a beautiful thing to go through an enormous amount of labor to feed your family something. And, we started saying Shema with my kids before bed at birth. And now it's such a part of our routine. When challah comes out onto the Shabbos table, especially if it's homemade, there's something more to it. There was an aid worker who was working in an African village a long time back, and her period of time was coming to an end there. And as she was beginning to shut down relationships and say farewell, a little boy who she'd had a very close relationship with came over and gifted her a shell. And she said, "Oh my God, no, I cannot take the shell," because she knew that it was a 2-day walk to the sea. And so the amount of effort to get that shell for her was enormous. And he said, that's exactly why you have to take the shell, because it demonstrates how meaningful our time together has been. So, Ellen, do you want to say anything else about what it's like for you to make challah?
I guess a couple of things I'll say about it is that I have a family with young children. And so my 3.5 and 5-year-old, nearly 5-year-old just absolutely love partaking in the process of making challah. So it's just an enjoyable thing that we can do together, from, kneading the dough and then to braiding it. They'll make their own. Sometimes we'll make it together and we'll do they pick their toppings. Sometimes it's plain cinnamon sugar. Sometimes it's everything but the bagel seasoning. And then we've had to expand that a little because my husband has celiac, so you can't have the regular flour. So I won't say perfected, but it's pretty darn good, the gluten-free challah that we make as well. So it's really fun. I really enjoy it.
Did you make challah, or your dad, or someone? Yeah. Okay. There's a fabulous movie. It's like 8 minutes long. I have it on VHS. Sorry. It's called Gefilte fish, or gefilte. Anyway, they start by showing grandma, who has the bowl, the big wooden bowl and the rounded knife, and she chops, and she gets it. I mean, she does the whole thing, the big boiling pot and everything. And the finished product is this fabulous little homemade little ball of gefilte fish sitting on a bed of lettuce with a carrot on top. And then it flashes forward, and this is a documentary. And then it's mom, grandma, and now mom. And mom throws all the fish into the food processor, and and real quickly, chops it all up, and then gets it formed into the ball, and it goes onto a bed of lettuce with a carrot. And then the third chapter of this little film is the granddaughter, and she takes out the Manischewitz jar and pops it open, but then makes sure to take it out and put it on a bed of lettuce with a carrot on top. It's so fabulous, because what Ellen's doing is she's creating a visceral element, an embodied experience related to challah. So this is not a picture of my grandmother's, oh, I forgot. of my grandmother's kugel. There are no pictures of my grandmother's kugel. I don't remember it looking quite that good. She made a rice kugel, sort of unusual. I think it's a Lithuanian thing, and she cooked by color, not by ingredient. It just needs a little bit more yellow, and so no one ever got the recipe from her. I wish that we had. I loved that kugel. My mom hated it, but I think that had to do with hating her mother-in-law. But that's something else. The reason I bring this up is because some of you have family recipes. Some of you have had the opportunity already to pass them on. Some of you relate to food in more than just survival ways or functionally. Food is power. I mean, that is a deep, deep connection. There's the smell, there's the experience, not to mention the taste, of course. When I saw this picture of the kugel, it brought back happy memories of my grandmother. And I wish that we still had this. So part of do-it-yourself Judaism could be passing on that recipe. And I don't care if it's beef stroganoff. If there's a family recipe that defines your tribe, ensuring that it is intentionally delivered becomes really, really meaningful. And when it's handed over to the person who's now going to take over, sanctify that moment. Make sure before you put it in their hands, you say, this was my grandmother's recipe. You know that your grandmother ate it or made it for us. I make it for you and your children, and I'm giving it to you now. And say Shehechianu. You know, what you just did was, well, you did your own Judaism. You just were a part of the expression is Shalshelet HaKabbalah, the chain of transmission. And so when you pass something on intentionally, you're taking your place, just like, you know, parent to child with Torah at the bar mitzvahs, when we pass the scroll through their arms. You know, we're acting out what I'm talking about here. Oh, Barbara's thinking about handwritten recipes. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yes. Yeah. Think about how many cookbooks you can find out there, written by someone who shares the narratives with each dish, you know, talks about who this came from and how they, you know, there's often in those cookbooks, little stories like that. Yeah, sure. Sure. Peter's just thinking about how Lador Vador can be expanded to include lots of things. It doesn't have to be just, you know, what you might think of as a generational gift Jewishly, I think is what you were getting at. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I was in my wood shop Tuesday, screwing up a little house for our new phone, and I was cutting wood on the shopsmith that was in my father's basement my whole childhood, and it was his father's shopsmith. So I'm using I don't know, a 70-year-old tool, and that comes with power. And I don't mean the kind that you plug in, because it's not got that, but it's really meaningful. You're right. You're right. I think I'm going to jump ahead. I'm skipping over candles. But I want to say one thing about candles. When I say ritual lighting of candles, your mind immediately goes to either Shabbos, actually three possibilities: Shabbos, and you've got the woo woo woo, or the Hanukkah, and you've got the shamus and got to go in this direction and light from that direction, or maybe Shiva candles or yahrzeit candles. Havdalah, very good. Thank you. I didn't even think about that. A beautiful, beautiful ritual. We'll talk more about Havdalah. I don't remember if it's next week or I think it's the one after, actually, the third session. What I want to do is this. I want to actually turn our attention for a moment to yahrzeit candles, because I think what's most interesting about yahrzeit candles is there's no blessing. And this is my theory, a rare case of me coming up with my own idea. Okay. So if you hear this out in the world somewhere, say, yeah, no, that was from my rabbi. I think the reason that there's no blessing on a yahrzeit candle is this. What Moiro is describing about the effectiveness of transitioning from one headspace to another for Shabbos candles, for example, Art was saying it starts Shabbat. Good. We need this performative ritual to get us there. I think when it's time for a yahrzeit candle, we don't need help. If we are ready to light a yahrzeit candle, we're already in the right space. Very rarely, I think, do people end up lighting yahrzeit candles while thinking about their to-do list. And so, yeah, go ahead, Art. Yeah. Are you saying, do you mean Kaddish? So Art asks if saying Kaddish is not traditional. And my short answer is no, it's not traditional, because Kaddish is one of the ones you need a minyan for. So traditionally, someone would light a yahrzeit candle and then go to shul to say Kaddish. What we do it in the progressive world, since we don't have daily minyanim, is we tell you your loved one's yahrzeit is on Wednesday, and we will be saying Kaddish for them the following Friday. So we invite you to come say Kaddish with us. But here's what I'm going to propose. This is an example where I think that Judaism could offer us something else. What if lighting a yahrzeit candle is not done just on a yahrzeit or on a Yizkor day like Yom Kippur? What if when you get to the birthday of your loved one, or the anniversary of the one that you just missed so terribly, or Thanksgiving and you've got an empty seat sitting at the table, or fill in the blank, you know better than I do, when you end up feeling this deep, poignant loss, we need a performative ritual in that moment. So why not go to the closet? Julie is pulling her hair out. I have so many yahrzeit candles. Every time I go to the supermarket, I think, oh, we probably need a yahrzeit candle or two. Go pull out a yahrzeit candle at the Thanksgiving table, if it's appropriate. Put a yahrzeit candle in front of an empty chair, or on your anniversary, put a yahrzeit candle out there for the one that you miss. And if you want to sanctify it with a blessing, sei gesund. If you don't need to, then just lighting a candle. It's not traditional. It's do it yourself. You say to yourself, this is what I need. What I want is some way to express what I'm feeling inside. It's actually the opposite, I guess. It's taking a visceral, embodied experience and getting it out. And so, could look cool. Just, yeah. Yeah. Oh, Carol's remembering a book that her father had that was from the army with some liturgy that goes along with it. We're going to practice writing liturgy next session, and it will be perfectly applicable in a case like I just proposed. I want to try one more realm of idea before we wrap up tonight, and that is that identity that everybody in this room gets to wear or to hide. If you're a person of color, you don't get to decide going into some environment that I'm gonna choose to pass as white today. But all of us Jews who are, well, there are exceptions, I'm sure, but for the most part, we look and dress and act and behave and like every other person around us. And so what would it feel like to expressly announce who you are? This is another exercise I give my conversion candidates. One day, if they feel brave enough, maybe a work day, If not, that's okay. Maybe on a Saturday, you go to Cove Island or something. And I want you to go out expressly announcing your Jewishness. Remember, these folks are not yet Jewish, but I want them to feel what it's like, because it's important to know what it is to pass, to closet yourself. And so, what are the examples that would include? Wearing a Jewish star, good. Wearing a kippah, yes. A hamsa, yep. Kiss me, I'm Jewish. That's what that says for folks at home. Yeah, I mean, think about what it is to go out in the world and say, this is me. I really struggled with that protest that I mentioned happened on Friday in the city, protesting Netanyahu at the United Nations. I desperately wanted to go. I didn't go because I have mild agoraphobia. The idea of being in that kind of space is very difficult for me. I actually recently, this is true, very recently, turned down tickets to see Billy Joel at Madison Square Gardens in the third row, because the idea of that environment was hard for me. So when I say I turned down the protest, I mean it was genuinely something that was too hard for me to do. The idea, though, of being with people and saying, this is me, this is what I stand for, and I'm here with my people, is powerful, right? Same thing when you go to like a sports game in Ann Arbor on football days. Oh my God, if you're not wearing Michigan maize and blue, you are the outsider. Oh, come on, Ohio State. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. So think about what it would be like to decide today, I'm going out as a Jew, to put on a kippah. Any one of you, girls too, and I'm not suggesting it. I'm showing you that if you wanted to play with your Jewish identity, this is one that would make a mark. You would come home thinking about it. I don't really think about it much anymore, but I remember one day in particular, I was still living in Denver, and they have the Western Stock Show once a year. It's a huge deal. So one year, Julie and I went, and we're walking through this place, and I mean, there's rodeo over here, and sheep wrangling over there, and cow judging over there. It's just, these are not my people, right? And I'm walking through and just looking at it all, and honest to God, little children were walking along, and they were, I'll have to model it. They were walking along and just running full speed into, pillars of, girder steel, because they were staring at me with this thing on my head. I felt like an alien. I've never felt so out of place wearing my kippah. And by the way, the one place I don't wear my kippah, many of you know me, you've heard me say this, is Israel. Yeah. Why? Because it's a powerful symbol here and there, but it's got more meaning there, and the meaning there doesn't reflect me. And so, yeah, I don't wear my kippah in Israel.
I was sitting next to this gentleman who happened to be the doctor for the rodeo, and he was Jewish.
Okay, so I'm looking at my notes to see if there's anything else that I wanted to get at. Oh, I'm just one more little example. That in a couple more days, I only have 2 of the 4 species here. The other 2 are in the refrigerator, and I was too lazy. So we've got 4 species that we've got for Sukkot. Yeah, we'll shake the lulav and etrog together at services tomorrow night. That's the beginning. And I personally do not purchase these, mostly because they are unnecessarily expensive, and the carbon footprint is antithetical to the ecology of this ecological festival. So what do? I wrote my whole rabbinic thesis, the 110 pages or something, on Sukkot. And I found this little known commentary from Rashi. I would have thought that it was better known, but Rashi says that these 4 species are clarified in our later texts, not Torah. And why? Because they were readily available. They were affordable, and you could just go out and get them easily. So he said you should acquire these 4 species or something that's readily available for you. And so for years, my family has been going out into our neighborhood or something like that and collecting. I can only find one picture, but this was years ago. I think this was before Amitai. What's that? Oh yeah, look at that, 2009. So it's several years before Amitai. So you know, the top leaves are aspen. You know, in Colorado, those are, yeah, right, the quaking aspens. A few other branches from our yard, and then Julie's got in her hand there a Palisade peach, which is, you know, kind of a, yeah, this was from Denver, right? So this was another example, I think, of do-it-yourself Judaism. You can't see, but to the left of the picture is the sukkah that my dad and I built. Do it yourself. Actually, for Sukkot, you might want to buy a kit because the one we built was horrible. So maybe that's, no, it wasn't small, but oh, that was mean. That was mean. Oh, Barbara, we were friends too. We were in such a fight. Oh my God. Anyway, you know, this is an example of where I had a goal. My goal was to participate in something, but to do so my own way. And so I say the same blessings over this, and it connects me to my peoplehood and is an expression of my needs. And this, in my mind, is a kosher sukkah. I mean, a kosher lulav. Incidentally, my boss in Denver thought differently from me on every single issue. And he forbid me from bringing this anywhere near the synagogue. I'm serious. Yeah, he wanted nothing to do with this and didn't want me to mention it, you know, and that was too bad. That was really too bad. That's why I get calls from my old congregants saying, we miss you so much. Uh-huh. Yeah. Okay, so what Barbara just said for folks at home is she'd like to have a better relationship to the calendar and other holidays beyond the big ones like Hanukkah, which I think you probably know is one of the least significant holidays on our calendar. I mean, they're all made up, but yeah, it was a later edition, and much more recently, it was aggrandized for competition. So here, you'll be happy to see then that my outline for tonight stops here. This is next session, and the first thing on this session is calendar. So we're going there. Okay. This one was space. Next time is time. Art. Yeah.
For Sukkot, and one of our dearest friends builds a sukkah behind her on her porch.
Mm-hmm.
Has never been in a city.
Art is, but they're divorced from their religious neighbors' meaning. Art is remembering how in Israel, plenty of what you might call secular people, because it's the only other good term in Israel. There's religious and secular. They're not secular, and neither are we. By the way, we don't qualify as religious in Israel. That's why I take off the kippah. But I'm not secular. I hated that. I didn't know what to call myself. So what art is remembering is that a secular person might build a sukkah, but has never been in a synagogue. And that is because they have chosen do-it-yourself Judaism. They have, although they've inherited it, they might not be thinking about it. Purim is their Halloween. You know, it works. It's pedagogically a powerful festival. If you didn't have Halloween the way we do, Purim would be the moment to go out and get tons of candy, dress up in costumes, have a blast. It works. Okay. Oof, that was fun. I'm exhausted. Carol said she's going to go home and bless her shrimp. No, of course not. Of course not. So I guess your homework is to look around your life. Look at the things that, number one, yield a lot of meaning. The things that feed your soul. Identify them. That's it. Don't do anything else with them. We might, but not yet. Just leave them as they are. And then I want you to identify the other things which you do. And I don't know, you kind of just do them. I don't know. You brush your teeth. I don't know. Is that a sacred, intentional activity that you're deeply engaged in? It's not for me. And so brushing my teeth might be when I come back in and offer to the group. But next time we're going to talk about the actions in your life that are powerful and not yet sanctified, and the actions that are sanctified and not powerful. Sound good? Okay. Oh my God, right? Yeah. I didn't have a whole lot more hair. All right. Well, I don't think there's any more pictures. No, that's it. Yeah. So I will send out the notes from tonight. And I'm going to hold on to the worksheet for next time. You'll see that almost everything we talked about here is listed. And there was a place for your notes, just in case you wanted to take any of that. So maybe next time I'll give you the notes at the beginning so you can mark it down while we talk. That probably would have been more effective. Thank you, everyone. I think we're missing next week and then starting up again the week after. And then it'll be 2 weeks in a row. Well, thank you very much. Of course.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Welcome, Joel.